Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're really glad you're here. Just for brief introductions, my name's Alex. I work more so on the marketing side with Port Credit Therapy Center, and I'll be hosting today's session. As you're probably already aware, today's webinar is called Calm the Chaos, Nervous System Regulation for Everyday Stress. And the main intention behind this space is to offer something both practical and grounding, especially in a world that can certainly feel like a lot of the time. In terms of housekeeping, just so you know, this session is being recorded and we'll be sending out the recording afterwards so that you can revisit anything that resonates. We'll also be leaving some time at the end for some questions, so feel free to leave those in the chat and we'll return to them at the end. And otherwise, if you do feel comfortable, we'd invite you to have your cameras on. It just creates a bit more of a sense of connection in the space as well. And so that being said, please take care of yourself while you're here. We have some guided practices integrated to some of the speaking parts, so stay tuned for that. We'll be talking about nervous system regulation. It can sometimes sound like a bit abstract or even clinical, but really we're talking about something very inherently human. So how we respond to stress, how we come back to ourselves, how we find moments of steadiness, even when things feel overwhelming. And this isn't about doing things perfectly or quote unquote fixing ourselves. It's more about building awareness and creating small supportive shifts that we can attend to over time. Now to introduce our speakers, first we have Harpreet Lakhan. Harpreet is a registered nurse and operations manager at Port Credit Therapy Center. She brings a wealth of experience working with diverse and often underserved populations, including in supportive housing and community care settings. Her work is in psychedelic-assisted therapy, along with her background in clinical supervision and healthcare systems. Gives her a really unique perspective on both the personal and systemic side of care. She's deeply passionate about reducing the stigma and making these conversations more accessible. We have Dawn Binkowski as well, a registered psychotherapist and the clinical director at Port Credit Therapy Center. She's been in private practice since 2005 and trained at the Gestalt Institute of Toronto. Her approach is supportive, compassionate, warm, and collaborative, helping clients understand patterns that may be holding them back while supporting new ways forward. In addition to psychotherapy, she offers preparation and integration work within psychedelic-assisted therapy, along with breathwork and clinical supervision. We're also joined by Katherine Hambleton. Katherine is a registered nurse with our PAT program here at Port Credit Therapy Center. She brings over 23 years of experience across nursing and paramedicine and has worked in a variety of roles that have helped really shape the way she supports people today. And for over a decade, she's focused on supporting public safety personnel, veterans, and individuals performing in the arts, many of whom are exposed to high stress and high impact environments. And more recently, she's been working in psychedelic-assisted therapy here in Ontario, supporting the safe and thoughtful facilitation of medicine sessions. She'll also be walking us through a short breathwork practice today with a few exercises you can use to support your nervous system in everyday moments. We're really fortunate to have all three of them here today, each bringing a slightly different lens to the same conversation. So to begin, I'll pass it over to Harpreet.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you, Alex, always for such a warm and kind introduction. So I'll start by sharing the slides this evening, and I will also love for us to just take a moment before we begin to do a body scan as well. So just bear with me for a moment. So if everyone can just take a moment to just allow themselves to arrive. So I'll be guiding everyone through a short body scan before we begin. And this is a simple, accessible practice. There's nothing you need to do perfectly. And all I'm going to ask is that you allow yourself to notice. So we all come here today from different places, different days, different moods, and different levels of energy. So I would like for us to use this time to gently set all of that down and just be here together. So we'll begin by finding a comfortable position. And if you're sitting, you might want to sit up just a little bit taller, not stiff, just easy and upright. And just letting your feet rest flat on the floor if you can. Resting your hands in your lap, palms facing up or down, whichever feels more natural. And if it feels comfortable, gently allowing your eyes to close. If closing your eyes doesn't feel right for you, that's perfectly okay. Instead, you can soften your gaze and let it rest somewhere low in front of you. And we'll take one easy breath in through our nose and a slow, long breath out through your mouth. And let's do that one more time together. In and out. Now let's bring your attention down, all the way down to the soles of your feet. You don't need to move them, just notice them. Notice the feeling of the floor beneath you. Noticing how your feet are feeling inside your shoes, slippers, socks, whether they feel warm or cool, heavy or light. Now notice your legs, the back of your thighs resting against your chair, the weight of your body being supported. You don't have to hold yourself up right now. The chair is doing that, and you can let it. Bring your awareness slowly up to your hips and your lower back. And notice any sensation there. Perhaps there's tension, warmth, pressure. You don't need to change anything, just simply noticing. Now bring your attention to your belly, noticing the rise and fall of your breath. The way your belly softly expands on the inhale and gently falls on the exhale. And if it feels right, you can also allow yourself to just have one hand rest on your belly. Moving your awareness up to your chest, noticing your heart is beating quietly, steadily, doing its work without being asked. See if you can feel the rhythm of your heart, or simply the warmth in the center of your chest. Now, bringing your awareness to your shoulders, This is often a place where so many of us carry tension without realizing it. And just noticing where your shoulders are right now. And if there's any room to let them drop, even slightly, just let them. Now bringing your awareness down to your arms, through your upper arms, elbows, forearms, all the way into your hands and fingertips. Just noticing how your hands are resting and allowing them to be soft. Now gently bringing your awareness to your neck and throat. Notice whether you're holding any tension there, any tightness or bracing. And just taking a slow breath in. And as you breathe out, imagine that tension softening just a little. And bringing your attention up to your jaw. Notice whether your teeth are lightly touching or pressed together. And see if you can create just a small amount of space between your upper and lower teeth. And just allowing your tongue to rest softly in your mouth. And as you focus on your breath, softening your eyes behind your eyelids, relaxing the muscles around your eyes, your forehead, and your brows. Imagine all the small muscles in your face gently releasing, as if there's warm water moving through them. Now allowing your awareness to expand to take in your whole body at once, from the soles of your feet all the way up to the top of your head. Notice that you are here, present, breathing, held by your chair, supported by the floor, and connected to this moment. Whatever you were carrying when you arrived tonight, the busy thoughts, the long day, the to-do list, just recognizing for now that you don't need to hold them. And you can set them down just for the next little while. And just taking notice how your nervous system is already responding. Your body already knows how to find stillness. And sometimes it just needs a gentle invitation. Now let's begin to slowly bring your awareness back, taking a slight breath in and exhale. And just slowly bringing your awareness back into the room around you. You might notice sounds, and that's okay. Just letting the world come back in gently. And whenever you're ready, gently fluttering your eyes open. Taking your time, there's no rush. just welcoming yourself back, noticing how you're feeling. And just take a moment now to notice even one small thing that feels different from when we first began. And that is your nervous system. It's already working with you, and that is exactly what tonight is all about. So when everyone's ready, we'll begin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Calm the Chaos, Nervous System Regulation for Everyday Stress. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Just a quick note, Alex had mentioned this webinar is live and it is being recorded. So if you need to step away and come back, you're always able to watch it again afterward. And as Alice had introduced me, my name is Harpreet. I'm a registered nurse and operations manager here at Port Credit Therapy Center. And tonight I am joined by my two wonderful teammates and colleagues. And together we're going to take you through a conversation that we believe is genuinely important. And it's how to understand and work with your nervous system so that stress does not run the show. So whether you're here because life has been feeling chaotic lately, or because you're simply curious about the science of stress, tonight we'll be sharing some practical tools, and this is exactly the place you want to be. So this is a roadmap for this evening. We're going to be moving through 5 key areas. We'll start with Nervous System 101. So it'll be a brief overview of how your body reads safety and threat. And from there, we'll look at the vagus nerve specifically. So this is often called the body's built-in calm switch, and it matters greatly when looking at nervous system regulation. Then we'll talk about stress response, what is actually happening in the body, and what is going on when stress hits, and why understanding this response changes a lot of how we move forward throughout our triggers and activations. And after that, we'll get into some of the good stuff. We'll be looking at regulation tools at work, so breathing, movement, sound, connection, and more. And we'll be doing a live breathing exercise together with the help of Katherine today. And we'll wrap up by helping you think about your personal toolkit. So what are you going to be taking away this evening that you can actually build and integrate into your life? And in the end, there will be time for Q&A, and we do have some announcements to share as well. So let us begin. So we do have the autonomic nervous system, and that's the part of the nervous system that operates largely outside of your conscious control. So, and it's divided into 2 branches. We have the sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is what most people know as fight or flight response. And when this branch activates, our heart rate increases, our breathing quickens, and our digestion slows down or pauses entirely. And your body releases adrenaline in this state. This is your body mobilizing its resources to deal with a perceived threat. So it's very brilliant and necessary in terms of survival, but sometimes we tend to be in this state a lot more than what is needed and what is healthy for our bodies. And the second branch we have is the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is also known as rest and digest. So when this branch is active, your heart rate slows down, your breathing will deepen, your muscles relax, and your digestion will come back online, and this is our body's recovery state. The important thing to understand here is that both systems are essential, and the goal is not to eliminate one or suppress the other. What we want to ideally seek is balance. So we want to have the ability to move fluidly between activation and recovery, depending on what the situation is actually calling for. Where problems arise is when we get stuck in one state for too long. And for many of us, again, that's the sympathetic activation or stress mode, which for a lot of us might be on all the time. And I want to build on that with a framework that has really transformed how we think about the nervous system in clinical settings. And that's the polyvagal theory, which was developed by Stephen Porges in 1994. So the central idea is that your nervous system is constantly doing something called neuroception. Neuroception is a term to describe how our nervous system scans the environment, our relationships, and even the tone of someone's voice. And what it's asking us is, am I safe right now? And based on what it finds, it places you in one of three categories. So the first state is the ventral vagal, and this is a safe social state. When someone is in ventral vagal, we feel more engaged, we're very curious and connected, and we're able to creatively express ourselves. In this state, you can think clearly, you're able to relate to others very well, and you feel very present. This is also known as what we call the optimal functioning. This is when our guard is down and we're feeling free to be ourselves. And the second state with the polyvagal theory is the sympathetic state. So this is fight or flight. This is when the energy surges through our body and tries to protect us from a perceived threat. So we might feel anxious, angry, overwhelmed, and this state is appropriate when there's genuine danger. Where it becomes a problem is it might be chronically triggered by non-life-threatening stressors. And this state is common for many of us that are operating in it without realizing. So we might have deadlines to meet. We're constantly checking our phones, sometimes early in the morning, just when we wake up, and we're running from one place to the other, trying to make it on time. So what happens is a lot of us are in that state day to day without realizing, and we slowly begin to function in the sympathetic state a lot more than what we should be. So for a lot of us, this becomes our new normal without realizing. And the third state we have is the dorsal vagal. So this is when we completely shut down or freeze. And this is what happens when the threat feels inescapable. So the nervous system will conserve energy by going offline. So in this state, people might describe that they feel numb, disconnected, depressed. And the key takeaway from this framework is the goal is not to live permanently in one state. It's to move fluidly between the states, but to be able to come back to the ventral vagal window of safety and connection, even after activation or when triggered. And that is a skill we can learn and practice. So a key part of activating or regulating our nervous system is the vagus nerve. So let's talk about the vagus nerve because it's really the star of tonight's conversation. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body, and it runs from the brainstem all the way down through your heart, your lungs, and your gut. It controls your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, and something that's really surprising is about 80% of the signals traveling along the vagus nerve actually go from the body up to the brain, not the other way around. So this means your body is constantly sending information upwards, shaping how your brain is receiving your lived experience. And within the vagus nerve, there is vagal tone, which is essentially referring to how well your vagus nerve regulates your stress response. So think of it like a muscle. The vagal tone is very much like muscle tone. You can train it, and a higher vagal tone is associated with greater resilience and better emotional regulation, as well as improved overall health. So the same way your muscles have a tone that's built through weight and resistance training, our nerves also have a tone called vagal tone, and that can be strengthened and developed through different exercises. And there are three areas where the vagus nerve has a significant impact. So the first is heart rate variability, also known as HRV. So HRV is commonly measured through smartwatches and Fitbit, which is quite common now, and also other forms of tech, and that is typically connected to iPhone apps or phone apps in general. And high vagal tone means your heart is able to adapt flexibly to different demands. So it's actually a key marker for cardiovascular health, but also emotional resilience. And the second is the gut-brain connection. So the vagus nerve is the main communication highway between your gut and brain, which is why what you eat and how you digest is directly influencing your mood and stress levels. And the third is inflammation control. So the vagus nerve signals the immune system to reduce inflammation. And when it doesn't do that and doesn't have that communication, the chronic inflammation is typically linked to many chronic illnesses. So when we talk about regulating your nervous system, what we're really talking about is increasing vagal tone and training this nerve to do its job more effectively. Now, let's actually look at what happens when stress hits the body. So this sequence here helps us understand our nervous system response to stress and triggers. First, there is a trigger, and your brain will perceive a stressor, whether it's real or imagined. Your nervous system does not always distinguish what actual physical threat is and a worried thought about, let's say, tomorrow's meeting. And what that does is it fires a signal to your amygdala, and that's the brain's alarm system. It will signal danger, and before it's able to even perceive the environment to see if a threat is real, it's already sending signals to your body to respond to that perceived threat. And then the HPA axis activates. So this stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA, and it's hormonal stress pathway. So cortisol and adrenaline flood the body. And then that leads to your body mobilizing. So energy is diverted away from your systems that our body doesn't consider immediate, needed for survival. So your immune system suppresses, your digestion, as well as your sleep is disturbed. And this is why chronic stress is so physically damaging to the body. These systems are being suppressed on an ongoing basis. And this is where it gets interesting. So ideally, the parasympathetic system kicks in and brings you back to baseline. But in many people, that fifth step is disrupted and the body stays activated. And that's what we call chronic stress. And something really important to sit with is, according to the APA Stress in America survey, 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms of stress. 1 in 3 report feeling extreme stress, and nearly half lie awake at night because of stress. And it's important to distinguish and recognize that's not a personal feeling. It's really a public health reality and what modern day lifestyles have brought us to. So how do we actually activate the vagus nerve and shift ourselves towards the parasympathetic rest and digest state? The good news is that there's many evidence-based ways to do this, and most of them are accessible, free, and they can be done anywhere. The first is diaphragmatic breathing, and that's one of the most powerful tools you can access. So that's when you extend your exhale, breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6 to 8 counts. And this allows your parasympathetic system to activate. So even 3 minutes of this kind of breathing has been shown to lower cortisol levels immediately. And then we also have mindfulness meditation, which increases vagal tone over a long period of time. So studies show that even 10 minutes per day of consistent mindful practice produces measurable improvements in your heart rate variability. Another one is humming and singing, which is surprisingly effective because the vagus nerve runs through the vocal cords. So when you hum, chant, or sing, you're allowing that nerve to vibrate. So it's very simple and also very, very effective. And of course, social connection is also something that activates the vagus nerve. And one of the ways we can really tap into social connection is through genuine eye contact, warm touch, and laughter. All this stimulation allows our ventral vagal branch that we talked about earlier to activate. And one of my less favorite is cold water exposure, which is a very quick acting tool. So splashing cold water on your face triggers something called the dive reflex. And that rapidly will bring down your heart rate quickly. Another alternative to that that I use is putting cold water on my wrists instead of my face. And also rhythmic movement, yoga, tai chi, walking. These all activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And the rhythmic quality of these movements is what we find to be most effective for improving vagal tone over a long period of time. So when looking at immediate relief from activation, the breathing, humming, as well as cold water exposure allow for immediate support for the vagus nerve. And if you're looking for vagal tone and something you'd like to work on through a longer period of time, meditation, social connection, and rhythmic movement is very supportive. And I would love to speak a little bit on my personal experience with the humming and singing. That's something that I have tried intuitively, not knowing that it was something activating the vagus nerve. During the pandemic, like many nurses, I became extremely burnt out and I had to go on a medical leave. It was due to a diagnosis called SVT, or supraventricular tachycardia. So what that really essentially is a very high heart rate, and it's followed by SVT attacks. And that can be described as very unpleasant palpitations, feeling followed with a feeling of doom is how people commonly describe it. So there was a period I had these SVT attacks, and I had come home from the ER and decided to lay on the grass in my backyard. And during that time, I just intuitively felt called to start singing and humming. And my rationale, or the way that I justified that need, was thinking maybe I was just grieving or processing this newfound illness I didn't know how to navigate. And at that time, I had a pulse oximeter on my finger and I could see my heart rate dropping very quickly. It was in the 90s, and within a matter of 20 seconds of singing, it came down into the 70s. And I became really fascinated, not knowing that what the vagus nerve was being activated and what that entailed. I had no idea that singing was going to be supporting my body through that shift. And that experience led me to Google what nerve is actually responsible for regulating the heart rate. And that's when I learned it was the vagus nerve. So that piece for me really played a huge role in my own recovering and healing journey as well. And beyond techniques, there are 4 foundational lifestyle factors that create the conditions for a regulated nervous system. So think of these as the soil that everything else is growing in. So sleep, of course, typically we say 7 to 9 hours is a non-negotiable. I know that can vary from person to person and different stages in our lives. During sleep, the body's lymphatic system does flush out stress hormones, so cortisol and waste products from the brain. So when we're undersleeping, our cortisol levels are elevated the very next day. Sleep deprivation and as well as chronic stress feed each other in a cycle, and one is really hard to address if the other isn't being well taken care of. And then, of course, we hear this all the time, movement, which can be really a challenge if we're working a 9 to 5 or we're in a seated position. And then even our commutes, we're seated in the car. So it definitely adds up. But movement tends to be one of the most effective tools we have for metabolizing stress hormones. When we exercise, it doesn't just help us feel better in the moment, but it's actually helping us process the cortisol and adrenaline that's been built up in our body throughout the day. And the movement really does help support our vagal tone over time. And nature exposure is something that is really, really supportive for our vagus nerve as well. About 20 minutes a day outside is naturally allowing our cortisol levels to lower by up to 21%. So you don't need a forest, a park. Sometimes just stepping out into the backyard or going for a walk in your neighborhood, it will do. And of course, social connection. So quality does matter more than quantity here. And social support is consistently identified as the #1 buffer against stress in research. So when we feel genuinely connected to others, oxytocin is releasing, whether it's through our connection with pets, animals, or friends and family or partners. And oxytocin does have a very direct calming effect on the nervous system. And that's one of the reasons why longer periods of isolation can also be so damaging on the health. And of course, I emphasize on isolation versus solitude. Sometimes some of us introverts need time to recharge, but isolation is really the emphasis here. Now, let's talk about how to actually build this into your life. So we want to offer a practical structure you can start using even today. This is just a guideline. Perhaps there's 1, 2, or even 3 things that you might find work for you that you can always pick from that resonate. So let's say in the morning, you consider starting your day with 2 to 5 hours of breathing exercises before you even pick up your phone. Cold water face splash is something you can incorporate to your morning routine as well. Brief stretching or gentle movement, that can really help your nervous system shift into a more regulated state before the demands of the day begin. And ideally, if we can avoid our phone use for the first 30 minutes of the day, that allows our nervous system a chance to come online gently rather than being immediately flooded with information and stimulation. So for a lot of us that might be using our phones to set morning alarms, that is probably a habit that also forces us into checking your emails and our missed calls and messages. So perhaps a alarm clock also is something that might be supportive in that avoiding of the screen. And throughout the day, there are small interventions you can weave in wherever you are. So there's the physiological sigh. So that's a double inhale through your nose, followed by a long exhale. And that's one of the fastest ways to discharge stress. There's also box breathing. You can always do that at your desk. And about 5 minutes step outside counts as a micro nature break. So if you can step out for your lunch breaks, that's also something that is regulating to the nervous system that we often overlook. Another one is slowing down to actually chew and taste your food. And that's surprisingly really effective with resetting the nervous system. And in the evening, the goal is to help your body to slowly transition out of the activation it's been experiencing throughout the day. So gentle movement or yoga can discharge any lingering physical tension. Turning off your screens an hour before bed. And just allowing your nervous system to prepare for sleep. So humming or deep breathing while you wind down continue to stimulate your vagus nerve. And a short gratitude practice. So perhaps journaling is something that you feel called to do that can really shift your nervous system's assessment or reflection of the day towards safety rather than overwhelm and stress. And the most important thing is that we can always pick one or two or even three things that we want to commit to that genuinely resonate with us. So if it's not something for you, you don't have to force yourself to do it. The reason being, small and consistent will always beat large and occasional. So if you pick two or three things that you actually like doing, then you're more inclined to commit to them over a long period of time. And now I'm going to turn it to Katherine, who will be discussing breathwork and leading us through a gentle practice as well.
Thank you very much, Harpreet. I appreciate you taking the time to outline the importance of grounding exercises and tools that are accessible to us as we try to regulate ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Our breath is one of our most accessible tools that we have for influencing our nervous system. And unlike many bodily processes, breathing is something that is both automatic and voluntary. So meaning that we can actually consciously adjust it to help and shift how our body responds to stress. As we've learned here today, the nervous system has two key branches that influence how we feel and respond to our environment. The sympathetic nervous system, which prepares our body for action, which is our fight or flight response, and the sympathetic nervous system, which supports rest, recovery, and regulation. Sorry if you guys hear a little ticking in the background, that's my dog. When we're under stress and our sympathetic nervous system becomes activated, our breathing can oftentimes become really shallow and rapid. When we intentionally slow and deepen our breath, we actually signal to our brain that it's safe for us to relax. Slow, controlled breathing, especially when the exhale is slightly longer than the inhale, can help us to lower our heart rate, reduce muscle tension, and create a sense of calm and stability, anchoring us. You can move on to the next one. Harpreet. Thank you. Simple breathing techniques can help us to support this process. One of the techniques that I rather enjoy for self-regulation is box breathing. Sometimes it's referred to as square breathing or tactical breathing. And what it does is it creates a steady and predictable rhythm that can help to stabilize the nervous system and improve our focus. Another technique that I often use and recommend, especially before bed, is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. This extends the exhale to help us to promote deeper relaxation and can be helpful in moments of heightened anxiety. In a moment here, we'll practice a few of these techniques together so that they can be added to our toolboxes. So if you're not already there, I'm going to invite you now to find a comfortable seated position. You can allow your body to be supported as we move into the practice. So we're going to begin firstly with our box breathing technique. What I appreciate about this practice is that it can be used in almost any situation and it can be done discreetly. Whether you're experiencing performance anxiety before a presentation, heading into a job interview, going on a date, or even finding yourself in a social situation that feels a bit too loud or overstimulating, this is highly effective in helping you to regulate your nervous system. It's a technique that is commonly used by athletes, clinicians, as well as public safety and military personnel before they engage in high-stress tasks. So I'd like you to picture a simple square, a one-dimensional box. Each side of that square is equal, and each side represents a count of 4 or 4 seconds. As we move through the breath, the first side of the square is your inhale, the second a gentle hold, the third would be your exhale, and the fourth would be another hold. Together, these 4 equal parts create a steady, balanced rhythm that will follow throughout this practice. All right, let's begin by bringing awareness to our breath. Gently inhale through your nose for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Now hold your breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale through your mouth. 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to do this one more time. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can continue following the rhythm of the breath and allowing your body to settle with each cycle. This is something you can repeat 4 to 10 times or as many times that you need for self-regulation. The next technique we're going to run through is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. This is designed to deeply relax your body and mind. It emphasizes the long exhale, which stimulates the vagus nerve, decreasing the heart rate and promoting a state of calm. It is effective for supporting sleep hygiene and self-regulation during moments of acute stress. I like to do this before bed sometimes when I'm finding that I'm having a bit of difficulty settling, and I do find it to be very helpful. It consists of a 4-second inhale, a 7-second hold, and an 8-second exhale. This can be done both in a seated position and also in a lying position. So start by taking a comfortable breath in through your nose. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now gently hold the breath for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale through the mouth. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Letting the body soften as the air leaves. We'll practice one more time. Again, inhale quietly through the nose. 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhaling slowly through the mouth. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Allow that exhale to release any tension, and you can repeat that cycle 3 to 4 times. Eventually, you can work up to 8 breath cycles. Personally, sometimes I find it can be a bit challenging to hold for as long as 8 seconds when you first start practicing this, but with consistent practice, it'll become a little bit easier. As we close this portion of the presentation, I invite you to carry this awareness with you beyond today, taking a few intentional breaths in moments of calm, so that when stress arises, your body already knows its way back to balance. These techniques are simple, but their impact is profound when practiced consistently. Even a single slow breath can be a turning point. Thank you so much for your time, your presence, and willingness to explore these tools, and I hope that they continue to support you in your work and everyday life. And next, we're going to hear from Dawn.
Well, hello, everybody. I have a virtual headset on, and that is what I'm going to talk about as one of the ways to help us relax, attain a deeper state of meditation. I am somebody who has done a lot of work in trying to slow my brain down, and so guided meditations have been quite difficult for me to stay present. And I have found that by using virtual reality and a few of my favorite apps, I'm better able to calm myself while being in an immersive environment. And that is one of the benefits of virtual reality, is you're in an immersive environment and your system, even though you might know that this isn't real, all of your senses are responding to it as though you are there in a calm environment with music and beautiful visuals. There are apps that take you out into nature, and the same thing happens, as though even if you're not going out, you don't have the opportunity to go out for a walk, you can put on an app where you are there in nature and moving around and taking a look, and your system is experiencing it as though you are out there in nature. There also are some apps that give you sort of a neurofeedback information, how you're breathing, and there can be visuals that happen as a result. And that can increase your awareness about what's happening inside. And it can be a little easier for you to slow your breathing down if you notice that there are big circles coming at you quickly if you're breathing fast, and slowing down as you slow your breath down. Guided breath synchronized visuals that expand and contract with your breathing rhythm helps. What also can happen in many of the VR apps is there's 360-degree immersive environments that you're in, which again helps you feel as though you're actually there. And all of these things are activating your parasympathetic nervous system, because you would not be there engaging in a calm way, looking around, exploring, if there was actually any danger. Safe virtual spaces for trauma-informed exposure and grounding for severe anxiety. It absolutely helps. It takes you out of your head, especially with anxiety. It's often increased by the narratives that we're telling ourselves. So what we want to do is get out of our head and into our body and into the experience, which is going to shut down the anxiety spirals that many of us can get caught up in. There are a few of my favorite apps that we have listed here. Trip is a really good one, and they have guided meditations. You can do one for relaxation. You can do one to help your focus at the beginning of the day. There are apps to help you calm down before bed at night. Nature Treks VR is another one, and you get to choose where you're going to be. You can be walking around. When you have controllers, with the technology, you can actually walk through certain environments, maybe standing still, but you feel as though, and your brain is interpreting it as though you are walking through different environments. And one of my favorites is Realms of Flow. And it actually was created to simulate psychedelic experiences. And we are using that here at the Port Credit Therapy Center. If someone is interested in doing ketamine-assisted therapy or psychedelic-assisted therapy, and they've never had any experience with the psychedelic, and they're worried about what that would be like, of having certain visuals and synesthesia. Synesthesia is where a sound might be presenting as a visual, or as a quality, fluffy, in relation to a certain sound, for example. And so what we're using, one of the applications for Realms of Flow, is for someone to be able to have that experience. They can put on the headset. We line it up with a particular episode in Realms of Flow. And so they can feel that they're in an immersive environment where unusual things might be happening. And there'll be binaural beats, which is something that research has found taps into our unconscious and subconscious. There's also messaging if you want. It has a breathing application, and it has a humming application as well. And so you can hum in there, and you can see these visuals that are being created by your sound. So this is also something that you can do and you can use to help deepen a meditation process. If it's too hard to sit in the quiet or to pay attention to a guided meditation solely that's coming across by audio, then virtual reality is a good medium for that, of being able to be more fully into the whole process and being able to calm your nervous system. What we are doing here is, for the month of April, we are going to allow anybody who is booking a therapy session to have 10 minutes for free in the virtual reality headset, so they can get an experience of that. I know often, I think of myself in my own therapy sessions, there were times when I would go for therapy when I was a client, and then it'd be a great session. There'd be things that were bubbling up, and then I would quickly jump into real life. And sometimes the insights or what I was processing, what was coming up for me, would be lost because I was too quickly jumping back into a fast-paced life. And I find myself that by slowing down and taking some time immediately after a session, and it can be in virtual reality, it also can be journaling or something, going for a walk, that can help to deepen the process of what's happened in the therapy session, and allow us to integrate whatever it is that was coming up for us. VR is also being used, named for PTSD, for chronic pain, phobias, burnout recovery. There are virtual reality headsets in some hospitals. In particular, there's a couple of children's hospitals in the States. And so when a child is having to stay in the hospital for an extended period of time, and with seniors as well, it's also available in some long-term care facilities or in geriatric wards, where this is being offered so people can have an escape and can be stimulated in a way that is very different than numbing out. Even though you're having an escape, all of your senses are being activated other than typically smell and taste. And that allows us to be present with ourselves and with the environment while getting out of our heads and out of the stressful environments that we might be finding ourselves in. We also are offering here, outside of the month of April, that virtual reality sessions, either on your own or assisted with the therapist are also something that we're offering here at the center. And I think that's it for my portion. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dawn and Catherine, both for a more different, I guess, twist on what we talked about in regards to nervous system regulation, and for Catherine's part being more interactive, which is always a nice change from a lot of information. So again, we have covered a lot of grounds tonight, and I want to leave everyone with 5 things to carry forward. So key takeaways that we have this evening. So one is that your nervous system is constantly scanning for safety, and you have the power and the ability to influence your nervous system. So you're not helpless in the face of stress, and just recognizing that your body has built-in mechanisms for regulation and that we just have to learn to access them. And the second is that the vagus nerve is your primary tool for shifting from stress to calm. So focusing on the vagus nerve, toning and activating the vagus nerve through breath, movement, sound, and connection is one of the most direct pathways to regulation. And of course, recognizing that chronic stress is in fact a health risk, and it's not just a feeling. So stress goes beyond just feeling stressed. It's not something that we just want to push through always. And knowing that regulation is a skill, and like any skill, of course, it's going to take practice and it's an investment. Breathing, movement, sleep, and connection are your most powerful medicines. They're not just suggestions, but they're also lifestyle foundations that will support us or undermine our nervous system based on how we experience those pillars. And lastly, small, consistent practices build lasting resilience over time. So you don't need to overhaul your life with these changes. You just want to find 2 or 3 things that work for you and just do them repeatedly. And what our nervous system loves is repetition. And before we do move into Q&A, we do have a few announcements. First, if you have missed any part of today's session or you would like to revisit the content, you can always find the recording on our YouTube channel at Port Credit Therapy Center, and we'll drop that in the link chat as well to make sure that you can save it, and we'll also follow up with an email to everyone that was able to attend this evening. Second, be sure to follow our Instagram at Port Credit Therapy. We have the latest updates there. You will know when our upcoming events are, and that also gives you some insight on how to register for future events. And that brings us to our next webinar, which takes place on Tuesday, April 28th. We're really excited for this one. It's on couples therapy, and it's going to be led by 2 of our wonderful therapists, Elandri and Richard. And you won't want to miss this. Do keep an eye out on our Instagram for registration details, and we'll also touch base through email. And of course, if you're not on our emailing list already, do visit our website, portcredittherapycenter.com. You can join through our emailing list link there. And if you are a therapist and you believe you have clients that may benefit from ketamine-assisted therapy, we are hosting an info session on co-care. That will take place Friday, April 24th. So this is a great opportunity to learn more about how co-care works and whether it might be a good fit for you and your clients. So that's going to be coming up very soon, and details to follow. For those that are not able to stay back for our Q&A, I do want to take the time to thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate your time this evening, and we do hope to see you at our next event. If you do have any follow-up questions that we don't get around to during your Q&A, please reach out to us at info@portcredittherapycenter.com, and we'll always be happy to get back to you on a personal level. And now this is the moment for any Q&A, and feel free to drop those in the Q&A box or chat, and Alex will take the time to read those to us. And Dawn, Catherine, and I can definitely take some time to answer a few questions.
Yes, so while we wait for some questions to get into the inbox, of course, any question, feel free, or reflection or personal experience is welcome. It doesn't have to just be a question based off of what we were talking about here. You can speak to your own lived experience too. I guess while we wait, I guess I can pose a question to all three speakers, Dawn, Harpreet, and Katherine. Um, in terms of like, I'd love to hear from each of you. What's one thing personally that you notice when your own nervous system needs support? Like, in what ways does your body tell you that it needs support when it's feeling dysregulated?
I can definitely share on that. The first thing that I feel in my body is my heart rate going up. And I touched briefly on that with the SVT. Luckily, I don't have the SVT anymore, but that is one of the things that I tend to feel. I do feel tension in my chest. So I usually have a natural inclination to want to put my hand on my stomach or even my chest. Those are the two areas I think the physical touch creates a sense of comfort. And breath, I always try to take time to do 3 deep breaths when I'm sitting in the car. I have a tendency to, again, the tension in the chest, I do hold my breath or I catch myself doing deep sighs, which for me is me recognizing I've been holding my breath. So my two things that I turn to are the touch, if I need to hold even my hands or wrists up like this, hands on the stomach, and also taking time to breathe throughout the day.
Can add to that. So personally for me, I too also notice that my heart rate starts to change, but I get a sensation of wanting to move or exit, depending on the situation. So definitely the movement is something that I feel coming on. I just kind of feel like a vibration in my body, and I have to either move by shaking or going for a walk or even maybe changing my environment. However, sometimes you can't have the privilege of changing your environment depending on what you're doing. And so in those moments, if I'm not able to physically move and get some of that energy out, then I will implement some breathwork techniques, the box breathing, or a psychological sigh, and sometimes even bilateral stimulation through touch.
For me, sort of two things. One is if my shoulders are up around my ears, that is me carrying my tension up in my shoulders and neck. The other thing that I'm quite aware of when I'm out of balance is I feel kind of raw. And so things that are happening in normal everyday life have a much bigger impact on me, and I'm feeling done too. If someone's walking too slow or driving too fast or something, I have a stronger emotional reaction to it. And that tells me that I'm out of balance inside and I need to do some grounding work.
Yes, thank you all for that. Even as you were just explaining that, I saw pieces of myself in all three of your explanations. I kind of oscillate between those, I guess, symptoms or, I guess, indicators that there's stress living in the body. And if I'm correct, I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat. So unless the team has any closing statements they'd like to say, we've reached the end of the session, but I will just pass it to them quickly just in case there's anything left unsaid.
I think I'll just jump in and throw one thing in, that there was a significant research study that was done on meditation for 10 minutes a day, and they brought in a bunch of participants who already had a meditation practice, and they hooked them up to a whole bunch of sensors everywhere that you could put a sensor to get a sense of their physiological age. And then they sent them away for 5 years to do a daily 10-minute meditation practice. And the results were quite astounding, that people came back at a younger physiological age solely by doing the 10 minutes of meditation. There's a YouTube video on this, or TED Talk, it's a TED Talk of one of the participants, and he came in at 3 years younger than what his chronological/physiological age was at the beginning of that experiment. So finding ways to calm ourselves really, really leads to significant health benefits down the road.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm going to have to Google that immediately after the session. But yeah, I think otherwise, thank you everybody for joining us today. Keep an eye out for further announcements on our socials and our newsletter if you haven't signed up for that already. And then otherwise, you will receive a recording either top day tomorrow or sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, hello.